Am I the only one that can't hear anything?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir.
Who knows how this works?
Thank you so much.
Okay, you ready, Derek?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So I'll convene the meeting. I'm Greg Hedda. I'm the House Chair of the Higher Ed Committee. As most folks know, this is my my second tour of duty on this committee, and I'm really pleased to be able to join the committee leadership again after a 2-year hiatus. I've been on the committee now for this will be my 7th term on the committee, and I look forward to working with each of you and with in a bipartisan fashion to sort of really work to make sure that we have a strong system of higher education in the state of Connecticut and that it works well to the advantage of students in Connecticut. We're particularly concerned about issues of access and affordability. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you as we pursue those, legislation to help mitigate the cost of higher education and ensure the open access to everybody in the state of Connecticut. It's an increasingly important part of our economic development strategy as we hear from employers who are struggling to fill positions with skilled workers. I think this committee will be up to that challenge and look forward to working with each and every one of you. My co-chair is online today, and I'll open the, let him say a couple of remarks, and then we'll move to ranking members and vice chairs.
Thank you, Representative Haddad. I had planned to be in person, but I had a last-minute emergency, so I appreciate everybody's understanding and flexibility. And very excited to have Representative Haddad on board, back on higher ed and as co-chair, and look forward to working with everybody on the issues that Representative Haddad identified. So I'll leave it at that, and look forward to kind of officially meeting everybody. And then we already started our screening process, and I think we're off to a wonderful start. Thanks again, and I'll pass it back to you, Representative Haddad.
Thank you, Senator Slapp. Representative Haynes, did you want to make remarks?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Happy to be back at higher ed, and looking forward to working with leadership in a bipartisan way for higher ed education issues, as well as workforce development. Workforce development is my real passion as far as apprenticeships and getting our workers to a good and great career and job. So all of those issues are something that's important here, and we're going to work bipartisanly to get there. So I'm looking forward to what we bring to the table this year. Thank you.
And Senator Kelly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This is my first tour of duty on higher ed, having spent most of my legislative career in human services, aging, children, housing, and that end or that side of the General Assembly. But this is a very important committee because it's hired not only higher ed, but also employment advancement. And this morning I was in New Haven at Southern with the Greater New Haven Chamber. And what you heard from all our job creators is that we need more talent. We need more labor. It's a tough market out there. And this is where we actually focus on this, is we do a good job. I think we can always do a better job at developing our own homegrown talent. No pun from yesterday's opening or this week's opening. But we also have to look at it, employment advancement, workforce development, looking at barriers, for instance, in our community college system. Southern said that 85% of their graduates stay in Connecticut, work in Connecticut, become taxpayers in Connecticut. I think that number is even probably higher when we look at our community college system. So we've got to make sure we eliminate any barriers in that area and make sure the proper support mechanisms are in place so that people that do want to seek a college education through the community college system have that and the supports necessary to succeed. So I'm looking forward. I'm really excited this session because this is something new. It's always great not only to deal with something new, but to talk about something that really impacts the future of our state. And that's what we do here. So looking forward to working.
Thank you. And we look forward to your active participation on the committee. The vice chairs are, we'll start with Representative Rochelle.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been on higher education and employment advancement for 3 terms now. I'm very excited to be back with this committee and serving as vice chair. Like many others, my passion is really the workforce advancement component, making sure that we are connecting people to the resources to get into good paying jobs, that we're supporting industry by providing them with workers who are ready and able to work for them, and really just building pathways to success both for businesses and for people in the state of Connecticut.
Thank you. And Senator Mayer.
Thank you. I am a freshman senator, so this is my first tour of duty. I am excited to be here because I bring many years of experience in the nonprofit space, helping students, first-gen students, access college, and helping them get into the workforce is incredibly important. So the dual components of both education and first-gen students is something I'm delighted to be here and bring to the table. So I look forward to working with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Good leadership team. I'm glad to be working with this set of legislators to lead this committee. We're going to allow all the sort of members of the committee also to introduce themselves, and for CTN's purposes, I think we'll do this. Maybe we'll let the folks in the room introduce themselves first. We'll start to my far right, and then we'll move from that side to the other side. And feel free to introduce yourself and tell us, where you're from and what your interest is on this committee.
Francis Rexford Cooley. I'm representing the 22nd District, Plainville, parts of Southington and Farmington. I'm a freshman representative coming from a background of higher ed, where I was the dean at Pear College of Art, which used to be located in Hampton, is now in Bridgeport, and is just Pear College, but I was the dean for 13 years and taught there for 23. So this is kind of a natural fit, and I look forward to a very productive year here on this committee, and I hope that the committee will do a great job. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tony Scott. I'm from the 112th District. I live in Monroe. I also represent half of Easton, a little bit of Trumbull. This will be my second term on this committee. I was excited to be put back on it. I did ask to be back on this committee. I did enjoy some of the work we did last time. looking forward to do more. I came in in a special election, so I wasn't part of the long session committee work. So I'm looking forward to finally be able to be a part of that part now that we're in here. But looking forward to the rest of this year and next year to see what we can get done.
Good morning, Representative Case from the 63rd, Winchester, Torrington, and Colebrook, a new district. So excited to be here today. As Senator Kelly was at a meeting this morning, I was at an EDC meeting and where we talked about workforce development. I have the home of Northwestern Connecticut Community College, and they are all screaming for students and people to get into the workforce. There are so many jobs in Northwest Corner, and I do have a bill out there, but I'd like this committee to also talk about it because one of the problems of getting to classes and getting to work is transportation, especially in the Northwest Corner. So getting students to go to the school and then getting students to the workplace is a big impediment that we have. And I hope we can work through that and get things rolling, but I'm excited to be here. And I'd have to say, I'm sad to see that we don't have Senator Kelly on Human Services, but not having 17, 18 bills coming, it sounds good, but thank you. And we look forward to working with you all.
Good morning, Brian Lanou from the 45th House District. I got 5 great towns down in Eastern Connecticut. My hometown of Griswold, Voluntown, Lisbon, my boyhood home of Preston, which is now my district, as well as Ledyard. This is my 3rd term in the legislature. First year in higher ed. I'm very excited to be a part of the committee and be part of the conversation. Well, workforce development is crucially important. That's definitely an issue that's very near and dear to my heart, as well as higher education. Our universities are crucially important for young people. And as Senator Kelly mentioned, 85% of the graduates of Southern Connecticut State University have stayed in Connecticut, and I'm proud to be one of those 85%. So very much look forward to the work we're going to all do together. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Weir from the 55th District. It's Andover, Hebron and Marlborough, part of Bolton and parts of Glastonbury. And I'm a freshman, very happy to be here. Workforce development is something that's very important to me. Is in my industry, we do a lot of work with the trades, and a lot of those industries are screaming for help, screaming for new talent. That pipeline is drying up. In the plumbing industry, the average age of a plumber is about 61 years old in the state. So that doesn't leave a lot of opportunity if we're not going to fill that pipeline. So I'm looking forward to having my input as part of this committee. Thank you.
Great, and moving to my left now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Gary Turco, the 27th District, representing Newington and New Britain, which is the home of Central Connecticut State University. I've had the honor to serve on this committee as House Vice Chair the previous 4 years. I'm very excited to be serving on it again for the next 2 years. And being on the Higher Education Committee is very personal to me. As a product of Connecticut colleges, graduated from both a private and a public university here in Connecticut with my bachelor's and my master's. And one of the issues that's very important to me is affordability of being able to go to college here in Connecticut, and how we can keep our youth when they graduate to stay here in the state and contribute to our workforce. So really excited to work with you all this session. I know we're going to do a lot of great work together. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Corey Paris, representing the 145th District. I call Stanford home, proud of it, but I call Stanford home by way of Little Rock, Arkansas, which is where I was born and grew up in Kansas City. And the reason why I share that with this committee is because I came here to attend Western Connecticut State University, which was really, in my opinion, one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. Connecticut has one of the best university systems, both public and private, and I believe that the investment that we continue to make in that system will only drive the workforce development that we have in our state. And like my colleague, Representative Turco, worked in higher ed as well, and really happy to be here for my first term on the Higher Ed Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Dominique Johnson, very proud to represent Norwalk and Westport, proud to reside in Norwalk. And this is my first term representing my neighbors. And like many of my colleagues, this is very personal to me. I come from a background of being an educator at the higher education level, a college professor for over 10 years, where I've taught in both public and private universities, and where I also come from a family of educators. So these are kitchen table conversations we have every day practically. And as former researcher, I know that these pathways oftentimes have too many off ramps for our young people, and especially for non-traditional age students and those that need us to move forward and advance our workforce and our higher education opportunities the most. So I'm really looking forward to working with all of my colleagues. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. I'm State Representative Kate Farrar, wonderfully representing the 20th District, both West Hartford and now Newington. This is my second term, as well as my second term on this committee. And I really come at this around a passion for all of the opportunities that you all shared, but particularly on workforce advancement. As someone who spent my career in nonprofit advocacy, I have a true passion for making sure that the pathways are equitable and that we are making sure that as many women and people of color are reaching towards our high wage, high growth career options in our state. And for me, and I think I will speak for several of us who came in last term, I'm just thrilled to get to connect with so many of you as colleagues in person. And I know that'll really make a big difference as we work together this session. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Fortier, also a freshman representative here, representing the 79th District, Bristol and Forestville. And it's tough to be last because everybody's made great comments. Bristol, like many of our communities, has this long manufacturing tradition. And I don't know the average age of our machinists in Bristol, but I'm sure it's approaching 61. And so we have that same issue that other folks do, where we're looking to replace that strong workforce with equally strong young people and giving them sustainable careers in our fantastic manufacturing businesses here in Connecticut. And so I'm happy to be here and participate in that.
Thank you. And you're late, but not last. We have a couple of members who are joining us virtually. And so I'll call them in, roughly in the order that they're on my screen. Representative D'Amico.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Mike D'Amico, state representative from the 21st District, which is Farmington. It's my first time on this committee, but certainly not my first term in the legislature. I'm happy to be here. I'm gratified to see that the remaining members of the Farmington delegation are also on this committee, Senator Slapp and Senator Lopes and Representative Cooley. And I think that's appropriate, given that in Farmington, we host the UConn Health Center, which of course includes the medical school as well as the dental school. We host Tunxus Community College, and we're right next door to Central Connecticut State University. So certainly Farmington puts a high value on education and higher education. And I'll just add one other thing. I'm gratified to see the 8th item on our list of concepts to be raised, having to do with reporting on the students' first plan implementation. So that ought to be interesting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative D'Amico. Senator Flexer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My name is Nate Flexer. I'm the state senator for the 29th District, which includes Mansfield, Wyndham, Scotland, Canterbury, Brooklyn, Killingly, Pomfret, Putnam, and Thompson. And perhaps most importantly for this committee, I represent students at the University of Connecticut in Stores, Eastern Connecticut State University, and Quinebaug Valley Community College. I have to recheck the district lines with redistricting, but I'm pretty sure I still represent more college students than any other member of the Connecticut General Assembly. So I'm thrilled to be here on this committee and looking forward to the work we're going to do to make sure we have a strong voice for students in our state and that higher education is accessible to everyone.
And Senator Lopes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rick Lopes, Senator representing New Britain, Berlin, part of Farmington. And I'm so unbelievably excited to be on this committee. Although I do have to say, looking at the camera, seeing May, Derek, and you and me, it's bringing flashbacks to 2008. So good to be with you. That's it.
Thank you, Senator Lopes. Actually, this is probably a good moment to introduce some of the staff for the committee as well. And perhaps if we could, we can start with, if it's possible for the nonpartisan staff to introduce themselves. We'll start with LCO. I see Noreen is online. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Noreen Hashmi. This is my 6th year being the LCO attorney on higher ed. I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but as always, if anyone has any questions about any of the bills or anything, please feel free to contact me via email or my phone number. And I look forward to working with everyone.
And from OFA, I see Sarah is online.
Hey everyone, my name is Sarah Bourne. I'm from OFA. This is my 19th session with OFA. I look forward to working with all of you and feel free to reach out if you need anything.
From OLR, there are two folks over at the little desk. You want to introduce yourselves? Jessica?
Good morning. My name is Jessie Callahan. I'm with OLR. This is my 6th year on the Higher Education Committee. So please reach out if you have any research related questions and I'll pass it over to my colleague.
Alex Rieger, OLR. This is my first year on the committee, but my 8th year in the building. So happy to be with you all.
And at the little desk, we have our clerk and assistant clerk. Perhaps you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Hello, my name is Jasaira Perez Acevedo, and I'm the clerk for higher ed. It's my first year, and I'm looking forward to working with everybody.
Hi, my name is Lucas Hool. Excuse me. I'm the assistant clerk on higher education, and this is also my first year. So I'm very excited to be here and working with all of you.
I think that's everybody. And so again, I mean, I look forward to a good year. There seems to be a higher percentage of freshmen on this committee, maybe than I'm used to experiencing in the past few years. Maybe that's appropriate given that we're the higher education committee. And so we're a great place for freshmen. We'll keep the hazing to a minimum. And I look forward to working with each one of you as you bring new ideas to our committee to help us achieve our goals. This is not just an organizational meeting. We have a list of 9 items under item number 4, concepts to raise. These are initiatives that were discussed in our screening committee earlier this week, and we agreed to put them on our agenda. And I guess unless there's an objection, I'm going to ask for a motion to raise all 9 items with a single motion, and then we'll have an opportunity to discuss and answer questions that anybody might have about any of the items as we move along. So is there a motion to raise the items?
So moved.
Has there been a motion and a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I can briefly go through these quickly if you'd like, or if you'd like to ask a question about any particular item, Senator Slapp, of course, can also help field questions about what these initiatives might be. Many of them are items that were holdovers, legislation that was passed with broad bipartisan consensus last year in this committee, but didn't become law. That certainly includes the first, I think, 4 items on the agenda. The first related to, increasing the availability of childcare near colleges, state colleges and universities in Connecticut to help address a need for an increasing number of students who have childcare requirements. The second item begins to sort of limit the extent to which colleges and universities can use applicants' criminal history and making determinations for admissions and financial aid. That is a bill that passed last year 22-1 out of this committee. Item number 3 increases the age for eligibility of post-secondary funding offered by the Department of Children and Families. These are our foster youth who age out of the system. We currently allow foster youth to access a benefit for post-secondary education in Connecticut until the age of 21. This bill would increase that to age 26. The 4th item addresses a long-standing concern that many of us on the committee have, and that's about unfunded pension liability. As we begin to pay off our long-term pension debt, it has had a particular adverse effect in higher education. Our constituent units have been passing that cost along to students in the form of higher tuition rates. Currently that's like over $1,200 at the University of Connecticut of tuition dollars for each student goes to pay for unfunded pension liability. This is an effort to try to mitigate that cost to students. Additionally, last year this committee did a bill that prohibited institutions of higher education from withholding transcripts in certain cases, and we'll reconsider that legislation as well. On top of that, there are 4 sort of new concepts. I will say this committee did a bill last year to establish a task force to study the Roberta Willis Scholarship Program. That is our state-sponsored scholarship program. That task force did not meet, but the need, I think, is still there for us to examine the way that we distribute that scholarship money, make sure that it continues to be an equitable distribution of funding across institutions. And so we'll raise a bill on that. The next issue is that concerning access to reproductive health care by students at public institutions of higher education. Those of us who represent students at public colleges, and particularly at UConn, have been approached by a number of students who are concerned about ensuring that a full range of reproductive health care opportunities are available to them, even as even in a new landscape we find ourselves with the recent Supreme Court decision. Certainly issues of transportation could be addressed in this legislation, and there's a commitment by myself to discuss this further in screening before the bill is finalized and drafted. The next item is an act requiring reporting on implementation of Students First as the ConSCU system continues to pursue the consolidation of 12 community colleges into a single institution. It seems as though they're approaching the period of time when they might get full approval from their accreditor to do that consolidation. This would be an effort for us to be able to benchmark certain metrics so that moving forward, we can have a common understanding of how Students First is being implemented and being successful, and track progress towards the goals that the system has enunciated already in their applications, and track that over time so we can see how the consolidation, once effectuated, is successful or not. And the last is student loan relief. This committee did a bill last year regarding student loan relief, and I will say that if there's one item here that I think is a real, all hands on deck sort of ask, we're certainly, the members of the screening committee are open to ideas about how we might mitigate the cost of student loan debt on people after they graduate. Last year there was, some initiatives that came out. We can start there, but I think that, we're certainly looking for ideas to incorporate in the legislation that will help mitigate the high cost of student debt. Senator Slapp, did you have anything that you wanted to add about any of these items before I open it up for additional questions?
No, it's quite evident that you've done this before. So excellent job. And that captures the conversations that we've had both, in screening and with our colleagues, and look forward to working on all these important issues with you. And as you said about the last one in particular, we had a lot of great ideas from both sides of the aisle in a few different bills last session about student debt. So we look forward to kind of cobbling those together, getting some new ones, and hopefully being able to pass something that will become law and that'll help relieve folks who are really struggling with student debt. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back to you.
And really, especially for new members of the committee, because this might be the first meeting where you're actually raising bills. So I'll just mention, and I think it's fair to say that, you know, when the screening committee puts together bill titles, it's an indication, really, I think of, you know, a priority list of things that the bill that this committee should be considering and moving forward on for public hearings. You know, an affirmative vote, and this is typically done by a voice vote, an affirmative vote does not, you know, indicate support or opposition to all of these items in terms of final passage. It is an indication that it is a topic that you think is worthy of conversation in this committee. But having said that, I know that there might be additional questions, and so if there are additional questions and concerns that people would like to ask, I'm ready to entertain those questions. Any additional questions? Representative Lanu.
Thank you. Good morning again, Mr. Chairman. I do have some questions for you, if I may, on item number 7. I'm just curious, what's the inspiration behind this concept and why are we doing this now?
Yeah, I mean, there are others who might also be able to answer this question. As I said earlier, there are students at the University of Connecticut in particular who have approached some of us on the committee asking us to consider ensuring that there are no barriers to access to reproductive health care by students, particularly at our public institutions. And this could be transportation barriers, for example. You know, so this is an effort to both elevate the voices of those students who are concerned about this issue and coming up with solutions that might mitigate any concerns that they might have. I think I saw briefly, well, I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to address the issue, but I don't see any other hands raised, so I'll ask if there's any follow-up questions.
I do have a couple more for me. You mentioned a full range of reproductive healthcare services. Can you better define full range? What are we talking about specifically?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, actually, I'm going to defer to Senator Flexer, I think, first on this. She's been very active on this in this area, and I'll ask her to say a couple of things and maybe in response to your question.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are a number of us, particularly Representative Haddad and myself, who've been contacted by students at the University of Connecticut about these issues. And I'd say 2 things. I think both nationally, I think young people have been rocked by the change in policy across the country with regard to access to reproductive rights. And so there's a lot of concerns about what's that going to mean moving forward. I think it's hard to understate how strongly felt this change in national policy has been felt by young people in particular, in recognizing that a fundamental right in this country has changed. And so they have come forward with a number of different policies, hoping that we're going to look at with regard to transportation and access to healthcare. But I'd also add that I don't know that this is just about the change that happened with the Supreme Court decision last year. I think for the students that I represent at Eastern Connecticut State University and at the University of Connecticut in particular, there's also a lot of changes that are happening at all ends of the reproductive health care delivery system. And so, for example, you can no longer access labor and delivery services at the local hospital that's next to Eastern and UConn. And so I think there's a lot of concern about these issues, both from a national policy perspective and making sure that people's rights are protected, but there's also some local concerns here as well, that there's a real lack of access to reproductive health care, particularly here in Northeastern Connecticut, that's very concerning for the students that I represent.
Okay, thank you. Now, when you mentioned the recent Supreme Court decision, I assume you're referring to specifically abortion, if I'm correct. Am I correct in that assumption?
That's what I was referencing, yes.
Okay, I'm a little confused what that has to do with Connecticut. No laws have changed in Connecticut since that decision, so I'm not sure why we're applying that decision to what we're trying to do here today and what we're trying to move forward on. I guess my other question is, we mentioned the abortion essentially terminating the pregnancy once the pregnancy happens. My question is now in a situation where a woman decides, a high school, excuse me, a college woman decides she wants to have the baby, deliver the baby, keep the baby once it's born. Will we be exploring here in this concept pregnancy care centers, types of places that women can go to get that prenatal care, to get assisted with in those situations where they want to keep the baby? Will that be encompassed in this conversation?
Senator Flexer, would you like to answer that question?
Yes,
As
thank
well?
you, Mr. Chair, through you. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Through you, I think that is what I referenced in my initial comments with regard to the bill. I think that I'm hopeful we can have a strong bipartisan conversation that looks at the full spectrum of reproductive health care and making sure that students at our institutions of higher education can have access to any reproductive health care need that they have. So whether those are issues around pregnancy and prenatal care, or those are issues around access to birth control and other parts of reproductive health care, I think what we're trying to do here is recognize the challenges that many of our students are facing and making sure they can have the supports that they need if they do have a pregnancy. And I'd also reference that I think item number 1 on our agenda goes pretty strongly to meeting to the needs of those students too, and making sure that once their child is born, that they have access to the childcare needs that they're going to have, especially if they are hoping to finish their higher education.
Thank you, Senator Flexer. Representative Farrar, you had your signal. Did you have something you wanted to add as well in response to Representative Lanew's question?
Yeah, thanks, Representative Lanew, for your questions. I guess kind of how I thought about it when I saw this concept was, I know in this committee, we've talked at length about the range of needs of our students, be it healthcare, be it food insecurity, be it childcare. And to me, I feel like in raising this concept, we're getting at the fact that for students to succeed, they need all of these supports in their lives, including transportation, which I think was mentioned earlier as well, to be successful. And so when I think about the students that have highlighted, in particular, healthcare and reproductive healthcare, I think it's incumbent upon us as a committee to make sure that we're really hearing their access concerns, similar to how we might hear access concerns around transportation of getting to and from class, or access concerns, as was shared earlier, about childcare and being able to get to class and have that childcare support. So I think when I saw the concept and hearing directly from the students, it's really an opportunity for us to listen to them and really about kind of making sure that they can be successful and as students in our state. So thank you for that opportunity, Representative as Chair. And thanks, Representative Lanew, for the question.
Representative Lanew, any additional questions?
I do. Thank you. I appreciate Representative Farrar's comments as well. My concern is I want to make sure we have it's a well-rounded conversation. And again, there's many students at UConn, for example, who are active in the Women's Center of Eastern Connecticut. That is a pregnancy care center. Women who decide they want to carry a child to term, have that child, raise that child, that they have those support mechanisms. And I want to make sure those options are clearly laid out as well. I'm not sure, I'm hearing some, obviously the arguments here, the Supreme Court decision and so on. To be honest, as well, Mr. Chairman, I swore an oath last week that I would protect and defend the Constitution of Connecticut and of the United States, and protect my constituents and the people of Connecticut. And I view as a legislator the responsibility that I have to protect women's rights, and that includes the unborn woman. So I want to make sure those options to try to protect unborn women are also included in the legislation. I'm not sure that's where the conversation is going here. So respectfully, I'm going to, and as many people who know me in this building, very rarely will I vote against the concept. I feel most concepts deserve it to stay in court. Let's air everything out. Let's have a discussion and see where it goes. But here I feel that this is just going in one certain direction. So respectfully, I'm going to be voting against the concept today. I do request a roll call vote on item number 7. Thank you very much.
Right. So there's a motion to raise all 9 items on the floor. And I guess in order for us to have a roll call on this particular item, then I guess I would have to just check with the makers of the motion to ensure that it's okay with them to modify the original motion to have a voice vote on 8 of those items, and then to have a roll call vote, a recorded vote on that one last item. We made the motion to raise, the motion that's on the table is a motion to raise as a concept all of the items under item number 4. And that was made, I think, by Senator Flexer, and I can't remember who seconded it. But that's the motion that's on the floor right now. And so Sarah Slapp, do you have any guidance that you'd like to add for how we should proceed?
No, well, I was just going to say that I seconded the motion. So I don't know if we're required to withdraw the motion, or we can proceed and those who are opposed can vote nay. I don't know if that's our discretion whether to do that, or we need to go and have a roll call.
Right. And Senator Flexer, as the maker of the motion, did you have anything you wanted to add at this point?
I guess I regretfully accept the change.
Okay. So given the maker and the seconders acquiescence to removing that one item, I think why don't we remove that one item? We'll have a vote to raise concepts 1 through 6 and 8 and 9. We'll do that by voice vote, and then we'll follow, since we've already had a conversation about item number 7, we can just move quickly to it. Sorry, Representative Case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question. I don't know if LCO can answer it. If do we need to build a consent calendar, or can we vote on the block? Because we haven't built a consent calendar as we had in previous committees, and the consent calendar usually is built one by one by one by one. And that's where my confusion was, because there are a few bills on here which I would like to vote differently on. I thought we were just raising them as an agenda.
Noreen, would you like to weigh in on this? As I understand it, pretty routinely, we've made motions in committees to move several items at once. I think that's what the motion was in this case, now slightly modified. Is that your understanding?
Right, because this is not a final action, it's just an action to raise a title. You can, and you're just voting by voice. You don't need a consent calendar. You can take the votes orally.
Yeah, so already the makers of the motion have singled out item number 7. I guess let me move forward and just ask, given that the motion that's on the table right now has now been modified to items 1 through 6 and 8 and 9. Are there additional questions about additional items, and we can deal with them on a sort of ad hoc basis? Representative Case, did you have additional questions?
Yeah, I just had some quick questions on the bills. This was the first time reading through this. Hopefully the first one, requiring increased number of childcare centers at campus. I know that was on last year, I believe, and the year before. I just hope we can work through that, because there are a number of people without childcare, not just at higher education institutions. In fact, my child's home today because we don't have childcare for him. So there's a lot of communities right now that don't have this. And I think that the number that's going to be put on this is what's going to defunct it, because it's going to be a huge bill that's going to go across the state for everybody. My question on number 2, is this sort of the same aspect as we did last year in labor, to where it's not check the box, but you can still ask it in an interview?
I don't know if Senator Slapp remembers the specifics from last year, but when I briefly looked through the public testimony, I think that this is on the Common App. And so some of our institutions that use the Common App, there's a question about this on the Common App. And so they collect the information, but this prohibits consideration of that criminal history as they're making decisions about admission or financial aid.
Okay, and we'll talk about that more, I guess, when the bill comes out. The other one we talked at length last year was withholding of transcripts. What didn't we talk about this, that this was a collective avenue for the universities to be able to get their monies and not release the transcript? And we want to try to allow the transcripts to be released without full payment of the tuition, without an agreement of how the tuition is being paid.
Senator Slapp.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Representative Case, for that question. We heard this bill in a public hearing, and I think originally the language was, or certainly the intent was just to prohibit any transcripts holds at all. We heard from institutions of higher education that might have the unintended consequence of increasing, if they weren't able to withhold at all, increasing their reporting of students to collection agencies and or blocking them from registering for classes. So a compromise was reached, and where and this is what the language that ultimately was passed out of the committee last year reflects, where the universities or the colleges, whatever, could not withhold for employment purposes, essentially. So when the graduate needed the transcript to show a prospective employer. So that's where we landed last year, and that was the bill that got passed, and that was something that was amenable to the colleges and universities, which testified at the public hearing as well. So I think we got to a pretty good place on it last year, and that's where we're going to pick it up this year. That's the intent.
Are there any additional questions for Representative Case?
Thank you. And so just to touch on, and I think Senator Flexer and I, believe it or not, will agree on this, number 7. I don't believe we're looking to change the codification in state statute, but being on the western part of the state and her on the eastern part of the state, we both have hospitals that are closing their maternity wards and closing their reproductive care, and it's causing people to drive 45 minutes to an hour and a half to get to those areas to get those services. So I'm hoping we go that avenue and not the other avenue, because it is codified in law in the state of Connecticut, and we need to move forward on that. And I'm curious on 9 and that concerning student loan relief. I mean, I agree with it, but the bottom line is who comes to it and who pays for it. And I think we're coming down to a very difficult year with a budget. We do have a surplus this year, but the surplus is for this year. The surplus isn't for the year that we're coming into. And we're already in a budget, if you look at it in depth, to where we have a lot of programs that were paid for with federal dollars. We have to come back and find out how to back out of that and fix the budget. So there's going to be a lot of extra asks, but we're not going to have the money to put in the budget. We still have the $43 billion biennium budget to build, the same as last year, but we have more programs because of the federal dollars that came through. So I just caution, we got to be careful on that, because it's going to get moved to appropriations, and hopefully Rep. Haddad is still on appropriations, because he has always had a strong hand with higher ed as far as explaining what is needed and why it's needed. So, and once again, I hope we can all work together. Those are just some of the things that I point out on here, that once we get further language, we can go farther. It's a pretty comprehensive concepts, and there's a lot here that affects everybody in the state of Connecticut. But I especially, that public health needs to really look at the reproductive health in the hospitals that are closing their birthing programs, because that is our corners, your corner, Chair Haddad, and mine on the western side. We have to travel, and it's not fair.
Yeah, I agree with those remarks. Representative D'Amico, you have your hand up.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I would just like to offer the observation in conjunction with what you had said earlier at the beginning of this discussion, that by voting to raise concepts, you are not signaling your affirmation or agreement with the final product, that you're simply indicating that you think that this is a matter worthy of discussion by the committee. And in deference to the leadership of the committee, is the group that came up with these concepts, in my view, no disrespect to my House members who have asked these questions, but I think in deference to the leadership, we should do what we traditionally do at meetings such as this, and vote to raise these concepts and have the debate about these particular issues at the appropriate time for the debate, which is when the bills have been written and they've had a hearing, and then they're up for discussion by the committee. So I think we're getting ahead of ourselves, I guess is the short way to say this, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks, Representative D'Amico. Sounds like you used to chair a committee.
Indeed.
Actually, currently the motion that's on the floor is again to raise by voice vote. We'll do it by voice vote, items 1 through 6 and 8 and 9. If we're ready, why don't we, I don't see anybody else asking to speak. Why don't we raise those concepts by voice vote, and then we'll proceed again to act on item number 7. All those in favor of items 1 through 6 and 8 and 9, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it. So those items are raised. They will be drafted, and then we'll schedule those for public hearing. We've spoken pretty extensively about item number 7. There's been a request for a roll call vote, and if there's no further discussion, Representative Cooley.
Just listening to the discussion so far. I mean, my question is whether this number 7 should really be in the Health Committee as an overall issue for both Eastern and Western Connecticut, and the issue of the hospitals rather than the higher ed. And my question is, having it here seems to be the wrong venue. And I really think overall, it's not just a problem for students, but the overall population. And I think that concept is really something that should be dealt in a broader manner than just with regards to students at Eastern, Yukon, Western, or any of the state schools, but an issue for all Connecticut residents, especially those in Eastern and Western Connecticut. So I'm not sure that this is the committee and the right venue for that. And I think we're excluding a lot of women who have concerns from that issue. So I have serious concerns. Is this the right committee venue for that issue?
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Senator Slapp, go ahead.
And thank you for the question, Representative. As the Higher Education Employment Advancement Committee, we have cognizance over institutions of higher education in the state. And so if we act on an issue like this, I think it's entirely appropriate, because we can't deal with everything. We can't deal with all women in the state of Connecticut, right? There are many other committees who do deal with pieces of that, but that no committee would ever take action on anything if they said, well, it has to deal with 100% of our constituents, or in this case about 50%. So I'm very comfortable with cognizance issue, and we're not we're not considering scope of practice and things like that would be in the Public Health Committee. But when we're dealing with what our public, or not just public, but what our institutions of higher education, what laws they have to abide by. That's the business that we have in this committee. So I'm comfortable proceeding as is with this item. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Slapp. I concur. Are there any additional comments? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Rep. Haddad. Senator Slapp.
Senator Slapp votes yes.
Rep. Haynes.
Actually, hold on just one moment. I'm sorry. Just procedurally, do we have I'm going to make sure the motion is actually properly before us. Do we have a maker and a seconder for the motion, Madam? Senator Flexer moves, and a second is from, who would like, second from Representative Farrar.
And Mr. Chair, I might add, I can't see it. I don't know offhand if we have members who are missing, but we may want to consider leaving the vote open.
Thank you. That's a good idea, but we'll see where we end up. I'm sorry, the clerk can call the roll now that the motion is properly before us.
Okay. Can I start over?
Why don't you start over? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Rep Haddad,
Yes.
Senator Slapp,
Senator Slapp votes yes.
Rep Haynes, Senator Kelly, Representative Rochelle, Senator Maher,
Senator Mar votes yes.
Representative Arceno, Representative Brown, Representative Case, Representative Cooley,
Yes.
Representative D'Amico,
D'Amico votes yes.
Representative Farrar, Senator Flexer,
Senator Flexer votes yes.
Representative Fortier,
Yes.
Representative Johnson,
Yes.
Representative Lanu, Senator Maroney,
Maroney votes yes.
Representative Paris,
Representative Paris votes yes.
Representative Scott,
Representative Scott votes yes.
Representative Turco,
Representative Turco votes yes.
and Representative Weir.
Representative Weir, yes.
Can I?
Mr. Chair, I don't believe I was called for a vote.
And Senator Lopes, I apologize.
Good to be recognized. I vote yes.
It's good to be Senator Lopes. I hear you, Senator Slapp, about holding the vote open. There are two members who are not present, but I have to ask our LCO attorney and our clerk what procedurally has to occur in order to hold the votes open.
You just have to announce a time certain when they will close. And the meeting would be recessed until that time.
Right. And can you tell me, does the Zoom link have to stay open for the duration of the period of time?
I believe that's true. Yeah.
So I'm
let
going
me
to ask
just-
the clerk then, is the clerk prepared to keep the Zoom link open for a period of time to allow additional members to, this is just not a contingency that I really anticipated before today, and I don't, she would, she's got the Zoom link open. I just want to make sure she's prepared.
Yes, I am prepared to
Okay.
leave it open.
Great. And for how long is comfortable? Should we say an hour or two?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so if that's possible, then why don't we hold the votes open until 2:30? Yeah, I think it might be. Yeah, I think it might be. Yeah. So we'll communicate with the missing members and tell them that they can vote until 2 o'clock, until 2:30. Are there any additional comments from ranking members or vice chairs? Senator Slapp, any closing remarks? Seeing none,
No.
then we'll, do we have a next meeting set? I think we anticipate having a meeting a week from today. It's, there's a contingency that we need to have an additional screening meeting in order to put together an additional agenda. And so hold open. Our meetings generally will start at 11:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But we won't be meeting, I don't think next Tuesday, but perhaps next Thursday. And so if you want to hold that time, we'll send out a meeting notice. And if there's no additional questions, then we will recess the meeting until 2:30. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Hi, Madam Clerk, thank you. Did I miss any votes and could I?
No, you only missed the voice vote, and
Okay.
it was for yay. But you were able to vote for the only one we had a tally vote for.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Hello, Representative Brown. Do you see me?
I don't.
There
Oh,
we go.
now I do.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm doing well. So I'm taking vote for item number 7, which was an act concerning access to reproductive health care by students at public institutions of higher education. So how did you just say how you vote?
I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll have
Thank
you
you so
down.
much.
Have a
I'm
good
all
day.
set? You
Yep,
too.
all set.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
One down, one to go.
No, he emailed me yesterday saying that he had a eye surgery
Oh, all right.
and that he wasn't gonna be able to
Oh,
attend.
okay. So we'll mark him out.